The mansion stood like a monument to perfection. Every surface gleamed. Crystal chandeliers hung motionless in the still air. The grand staircase curved upward through silence. But something felt wrong. The marble floors were too clean, the walls too white. Nothing here seemed to breathe. Artem had worked in many homes during his 60 years. He'd swept floors in cramped apartments. He'd tended gardens behind modest houses. But never had he felt such emptiness in a place filled with so much. The Volkov estate had everything money could buy, yet walking through its halls felt like moving through a beautiful tomb. He was just the gardener. His hands were rough from soil and seasons, his back bent from years of labor. Nobody noticed him as he trimmed hedges or swept pathways. That was fine. Artem had learned long ago that being invisible had its advantages. You saw things, you heard things, things that mattered. The boy appeared every morning at the same window, 7 years old, perfectly dressed, hair combed just so. He would stand there for hours, not playing, not reading, just standing. His eyes looked out at the garden but seemed to see nothing at all. Other children ran. They laughed. They got dirty. This child stood like a porcelain doll behind glass. Artem noticed the stillness first. Then came other details. The way the boy never made a sound. How his mother would speak to him and receive no response. The father barely looked up from his phone. Specialists came and went. Doctors, tutors, therapists. They all nodded and smiled. They spoke in complicated words. They left with fat envelopes and satisfied expressions. But the boy remained the same. Silent, distant, frozen. One afternoon, Artem was pruning roses beneath that window. The boy was there again. Artem looked up and waved. The child's eyes moved. Just slightly, just enough. For one brief moment, something flickered there. Something alive. Then it vanished like a candle flame in wind. That night, Artem couldn't sleep. He thought of his own son, lost to illness 20 years ago. He remembered the boy's laughter, the way he'd chase butterflies through their small garden, the warmth of his small hand in Artem's rough palm. That warmth had died with him. But Artem had learned something from that loss. He'd learned to see pain in others, real pain, the kind that hides behind perfect facades. The next day, he watched more carefully. The mother brought the boy breakfast on a silver tray. The child sat motionless. She cut his food into tiny pieces, fed him like an infant. Her hands trembled slightly. Her smile was too bright, too forced. When she thought no one was looking, her face collapsed into something close to despair. Artem had seen that look before, on his wife's face, in the mirror. It was the look of someone drowning in plain sight. He began to notice patterns. The boy wore long sleeves even in summer heat. His movements were careful, too careful, like someone afraid of breaking or being broken. The specialists came twice a week. They ran tests. They asked questions. They wrote reports. But none of them really looked at the child, not the way Artem did. One morning, Artem found the boy alone in the garden. The nanny had stepped inside to answer a phone call. The child stood by the fountain. Artem approached slowly, quietly. He knelt beside a flower bed and began working. He didn't look directly at the boy, just spoke softly, as if to the flowers. "They see only what they want to see," he murmured. "But you can't fool a tree. A tree knows when something's wrong with the soil, when there's not enough water, not enough light. A tree knows." The boy's head turned, just slightly. Artem felt the weight of that small attention. He continued working, continued speaking, about gardens, about growth, about how some plants need different care than others, how what works for one might kill another, how you have to really look, really see, really listen. The nanny returned. The moment broke, but something had shifted. Artem felt it in his chest, a tightening, a knowing. This child needed help, real help. Not the kind that came with degrees and expensive suits. The kind that came from actually seeing, from actually caring. He started paying closer attention to the specialists, the way they smiled and nodded, the way they never touched the boy, never got down to his level. They stood over him, talked about him, around him, never to him. They saw a case, a diagnosis, a problem to be solved with the right combination of treatments and medications. Instead, they didn't see a child slowly disappearing. Artem's hands shook as he trimmed the hedges one Thursday afternoon. A new specialist had arrived, younger than the others, more confident. He'd spent an hour with the boy, emerged with a thick folder of notes, told the parents everything was progressing normally, that patience was key, that these things took time. The mother's face had crumbled with relief. The father had written a check. The specialist had left in his expensive car, and the boy had returned to his window. Silent, empty, fading. That night, Artem made a decision. It might cost him everything. His job, his small room above the garage, his dignity. But he couldn't stay silent anymore. He'd stayed silent once before, when his son first got sick, when he'd trusted the doctors completely, when he'd been too afraid to question, too intimidated by their knowledge. By the time he'd found his voice, it was too late. He wouldn't make that mistake again. The next morning he asked to speak with Mrs. Volkov. She looked surprised. The gardener had never requested an audience before. She agreed, more from curiosity than anything else. They met in the sunroom. She sat in a velvet chair. He stood, hat in hands, heart pounding. "Forgive me," he began. His voice was rough, unused to speaking so many words at once. "I know it's not my place. I'm just the gardener. But I need to tell you something about your son." Her face hardened. "The specialists have assured us. The specialists are wrong." Silence fell like a stone. Mrs. Volkov stared at him. Artem forced himself to continue, to say what he'd seen. The stillness that wasn't shyness. The silence that wasn't peace. The way the boy flinched when touched. The bruises he'd glimpsed beneath those long sleeves. Not from falls or play, from something else, something deliberate. "Someone is hurting him," Artem said. Each word felt like pulling teeth. "Not you, not your husband, but someone close. Someone he sees regularly. Someone he's afraid to tell about." Mrs. Volkov's face went white, then red. "How dare you? Please." Artem's voice cracked. "I lost my son. I know what it looks like when a child is suffering, when they're trapped. Your boy isn't autistic. He isn't delayed. He's terrified, and he's given up hope that anyone will help him." The room spun. Mrs. Volkov stood. Artem braced himself for dismissal, for rage. Instead, she began to cry. Deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to tear from her core. She sank back into her chair, covered her face with perfectly manicured hands. "I knew," she whispered. "Deep down, I knew something was wrong, but the doctors kept saying, and everyone kept telling me, and I wanted so badly to believe them." The truth came out slowly, painfully, like poison being drawn from a wound. The nanny, the one everyone trusted, the one with perfect references. She'd been hurting the boy for months, punishing him for small infractions, threatening him if he told, convincing him that no one would believe him anyway, that he deserved it. The specialists had missed it completely, too focused on their tests, their theories, their diagnoses. They'd looked at brain scans and developmental charts, but they'd never really looked at the child himself, never seen the fear in his eyes, the way he froze when certain people entered the room, the way he'd stopped trying to communicate at all. But Artem had seen, because he'd looked with his heart instead of his head, because he'd remembered what it meant to really pay attention, to see beyond the surface, to care more about truth than being right. The police came. The nanny was arrested. The specialists were dismissed. New help arrived, real help. people who listened, who watched, who saw the boy as a person, not a problem. Slowly, painfully, the child began to emerge, like a flower pushing through frozen ground. Months later, Artem was working in the garden when he heard it. Laughter, high and clear and utterly free. He looked up. The boy was running across the lawn, chasing a butterfly. His mother sat on a bench nearby, watching, smiling, really smiling this time. The child caught sight of Artem, ran toward him, threw small arms around the old man's waist. Artem's rough hands came up, patted the boy's back gently. His eyes burned with tears he didn't try to hide. Inside the mansion, something had changed. The crystal chandelier in the main hall now held lit candles. Their warm glow danced across walls that no longer felt so cold. The perfect surfaces bore small scuffs and fingerprints, signs of life, of living, of love. Mrs. Volkov approached Artem one evening, pressed an envelope into his hands. He tried to refuse. She insisted. Inside was more money than he'd seen in years, and a letter, thanking him, calling him a hero, saying he'd saved her son's life. Artem folded it carefully, put it in his pocket. But the real payment had already been received, in a child's laughter, in a mother's genuine smile, in the knowledge that sometimes the most important things can only be seen by those willing to truly look. The mansion still stood grand and beautiful, but now it breathed, now it lived, because someone had cared enough to see past the perfection, to notice what everyone else had missed, to speak up when silence would have been easier. True value isn't measured in marble floors or crystal chandeliers. It lives in the courage to see truth, in the compassion to act on it, in the simple, profound act of paying attention to what really matters. Sometimes the smallest voice carries the most important message. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks sees what everyone else misses. Sometimes all it takes to change a life is one person willing to really look, really see, really care. And sometimes, the greatest wisdom comes not from those with the most education, but from those with the most heart.